Okay, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here to understand the difference in why lots of ad copy is incomplete and why the majority of marketing messages just flat out fail. And it has to do with certain distinctions as to whether or not the message is going to reach somebody and resonate with them. And it really comes down to this. So, firstly, one of the things that everyone, talks about for one is, we've got a problem, right? And our offer, right, is meant to solve that problem, so we've got a solution. But herein lies the issue, right? Because every offer has a problem it solves and it has a solution that it solves the problem with. What we have found is that people are typically what we call, blind to what the uh, end line user, consumer, prospect really sees because they see it from their perspective rather than from another perspective, from your perspective. And so typically what we often see is people talk too much about their solutions and too much about problems when in fact they're not necessarily always the same. That they're not the same pieces that really need to be talked to someone. And this may seem simple on the surface when I finish this out, but stay with me. You're going to see that this is not necessarily what you might think it to be. So, firstly, um, actually, let's take that and go dish away. What we're going to do is there's actually a better message and something that we need to understand about problem solution. And that is simply the fact that most problems, uh, half of the time or more, someone doesn't actually even understand what their actual problem is, right? And if they do, then they understand it. But the issue here really is most people, our research have shown, really respond to the symptoms of that problem, which is what we refer to as the pain. Okay. So let me just put that where it actually, you can see it. Okay. So the pain. And the difference is, as one example, we might talk about, like leaky gut, right? Like that's a problem, right? It's a diagnosis. But most people don't even realize they have leaky gut. And what does leaky gut? What are the symptoms of leaky gut? Well, it's fatigue, brain fog, uh, skin rashes, uh, cramps, all types of things that happen when the problem, is one thing, but not everyone understands what their actual problem is. They're only reacting to the symptoms, right? So it's much more about the symptoms in that respect. The same things with marketing. Oftentimes people will say something like, "Look, you need to, uh, adjust your market and get more engagement." Well, that's kind of a solution, over here, or it's like you're not getting enough engagement. Well, that's a problem, but they may not necessarily understand that the engagement is so important for your ads in marketing to uh, get you better impressions and placements placements in the ad auction system in the algorithm. And so the issue here is oftentimes if something like that is happening, you have to talk about the symptoms of low engagement, which is ads burning out, right? Because if you have low engagement, your ads will not win a lot of auctions and get a lot of impressions, and they end up burning out anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. So, but if we talked about ads burning out, then everybody responds to that. So the big distinction here is understanding the difference between a problem or what we might also call a root cause, which half the time, people don't even know what the root cause really is, and they don't care. They just want the symptoms to stop. So why don't we talk to them about symptoms, right? But this is typical. A lot of people and marketers use the same tropes of problem solution marketing, which has certain merits to a certain awareness of people, which is why it doesn't die out, because it's a healthy portion of people that understand problems and understand solutions. But that's not everything. And it's in fact less than half. Okay. And so the same thing happens with a solution where, you may not necessarily care what the solution is because they're wanting a benefit, right? This is the positive dimension. Okay. And so the solution is kind of the thing that makes it work, but the benefit, that's what they want, right? That's what they really actually want, is benefit, the thing that it gives them, right? And for some reason, most marketers tend to believe that they can just say the solution and then they automatically assume that people are going to understand all the benefits from that. And that is not selling. That is not marketing. You offer a solution and people need to understand the benefits. So what am I getting at here? Okay. So most ads typically have a problem and a solution. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what we know works all the time is symptoms of the problem and benefits of the solution, right? And sometimes we have to make mention of these things, problems and solutions, but we need to highlight our messaging around these things, okay? Now, here's the issue. There's one more piece of info that actually really makes a difference. And we call that more of the constraints, okay? So let's look at it this way. If you have a pain, right? This is what most ads have, which is pain, and then and that's it, right? They'd be like, attention avatar. Are you suffering from this? Are you suffering from pain? Are you suffering from problem? Rarely, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. And then the smarter marketers actually add a second dimension where they actually do put in the benefit, right? So they will actually put in the benefit to a certain degree, not always. But what happens is sometimes they do one or two. They either put in the pain or they put in the benefit, one or the other, along with trying to do an avatar call out, which actually, quite frankly, pisses people off when you try to talk directly to them in their newsfeed, and it causes higher negative feedback. People don't actually realize that whole feedback loop in the algorithm, and they try to use traditional marketing with all this second person language with you, your, and asking questions, and all it does. That's great sales in person, but it's not what actually doesn't work for social media like that. So and because of that, people just kind of blindly assume, and they don't understand the feedback loop that the algorithms have in order for ads to sustain, okay, which is more about user experience and then also conversion rates. So then the big thing is that we typically have someone who is using either pain or benefit, right? And typically avatar call out, get benefit, or avatar call out, are you suffering from this, or do you have a problem with this, are you frustrated with this, or a realtor, like, are you looking to sell your home, which is like, are you looking for solution, like, yeah. So essentially what we've got to do is what we like to do, and this is the same reason why before and after photos work so well, is because it allows for contrast, which is a pain and a benefit put together, right? And so what that does is it creates what you might say mental contrast. And the further apart and more contrasting the pain and the benefit are, okay, look at it this way, benefit here, pain here, the further apart they are, right, the more mental tension, okay, the more contrast. which people respond to, and it evokes emotion and feelings when doing so, right? When you see the difference, when you can compare something to something else, the very much negative dimension to the positive dimension, and the gap between it is where that's all created. So that creates tension, okay? And then the third thing is what we would call the challenge or the constraint, right? And the challenge is typically the things that will stop them from moving forward. And it's a handful of things. It can be the problem with other solutions in the marketplace that aren't working for them, or it could be an objection they have to your solution once you've presented your solution. Okay. So it depends on what level they understand your solution already and whether or not it works. Now, if you have this challenge, then what typically happens is this challenge will create something else down here. It's like pulling this string back. And now, instead of it just that tension in the middle, okay, what's actually going to happen is more like a, there it is. It's like a bow and arrow, right? And so instead of it just being the tension here, right, it's actually down here and ready so that it will, once you let it go, with the constraints supercharging the contextual understanding of the pain and the benefit, then this shoots them off and moves them forward. But what does that equate to? Clicking a link or entering a form or buying something, okay? And so the thing that we are doing is we have developed a system, this is over years and years, more than the past decade, of a messaging system that is quite superior because we understand this negative dimension, positive dimension, and the constraints we need to eliminate, right? And when we do it with messaging, what we found is that this thing in the middle here, right? The overlap of the three dimensions creates higher click rates tested by data and numbers, looking at click rates, right, and engagement rates, and higher conversion rates because people are given so much more context for what they are going to get. And because of that, they're willing to move forward because they have a better, stronger, clearer expectation of what they are going to get if they follow your message because of this. Okay. So what we've put together is our actual PBC workshop for pain, benefit, challenge. And we have a three-phased approach where we build permutations of the right message sets that accomplish the right thing, that appeal to the right parts of the brain that actually create higher converting messages. And after about 120 people going through a handful of these workshops with us, there's always doubling, tripling of click rates, conversion rates. People are blown away. And you can always go look at tons of our testimonials and screenshots and results that we have of people who've gone through this workshop. So ultimately, this concept is what we base our whole message mapping workshop around. Okay. Our message mapping workshop is meant to lead you through over the course of 2 weeks, because a 24-hour test does not work. Okay. Not long term, and it doesn't tell you what you really need to know to be able to extrapolate and scale with, right? It's just like, oh, winner takes all. Let's use that winner. Let's start all over again and try another one. No. We've got a messaging system that once you do this test, you're able to extrapolate and use different permutations to scale. Because what that does is it creates new message sets that you can scale into the same audiences with a better message that people who did not respond before now will respond to. Okay. And so this is how we continue to scale far beyond others, because we're not trying to just find fresh new audiences. We're actually creating new message sets with new contextual frames. Well, in order to understand that, going through this process, what we call our PBC process, okay? And it's not as simple as you think. Some people are like, oh, well, that's just a 1, 2, 3, add one, add the other, add that one. No, it's not. There's a lot more to it. And there's actually a lot more ways where you can screw it up and it devalidate all the results. It's very important that you understand that. So some people have done that. They have said, "Oh, I kind of get the concept. Okay, let me go try that." No, they mess it up every time, every single time. There's too much to understand about this and how to properly administer the test, and then also to understand that you've got the right things to test in the first place. As a good example, some people will try to use for their benefit a negative, um, a negated, like, no, sorry, like for their pain, they'll try to use a negated positive, right? Um, and then also a positively stated negative. They'll do the opposites, which don't really help you understand the real dimensions that are present so that the brain responds in a certain part of the brain to the negative dimension, to the positive dimension, and then to eliminate the constraints that allow you to move someone forward. Okay. So if you want to find more info about how this works and even possibly join us in our next message mapping workshop, click the link below or somewhere around in this post. If you're seeing this in your feed or on a page, follow the directions, move forward. All right. And we will see you there.